So in the middle, this goes all the way down, but it's going to be faced in stone. And then we dig. Let me just check what I'm digging through. Yeah, that was good. Huh. The idea is the rain comes in the middle and it drains into the water cave below. If I had more space, I might actually build a well or something. But we don't have enough space in there. And then inside there... ein bar. I didn't mean to do all that. I didn't mean to make that many stone bricks. Oh my god. Stop spamming. Alright. And that drains down the bottom. Are we done with the tholos? How do we feel about this? Pretty good? Pretty okay with how this turned out? Alright, let me get my scaffolding back. And then we gotta start thinking about the terraces. I guess we are gonna use a lot of stone bricks. If we're doing stone brick terraces. Are we doing stone brick terraces? I guess we are. Mud brick terraces is also an option. Okay, now what? Now down here, I was thinking like a road down the middle, and then like landscaping either side. Or potentially there's like trees in the middle of the road as well, so like a garden path. Maybe it's like loops around the trees a little bit. Not sure. Not 100% sure. And then we get to here, there's not that much space, right? And then I want a building to AFK in about here. And then the road has to join out that way. Also going down there. Complicated. This is gonna be complicated. Yeah. What should we do? Let's fill in under the ramps and put a border around it so we know how much space we have to work with. Snow blocks. Right, so everything underneath, everything directly underneath the path is no blocks. Let me replace that torch outside. Not sure if we really need to put stone brick borders around, because it ended up being quite thick, right? I guess roads should be thick. It should be substantial if you want your roads to be convincing. I should have gone the other way, because now I can't get inside there. Alright, awkward. I should have came the other way. And like this, for example. Does it really go all the way down? Down into the water as well? Or maybe it does. All the way down. Kinda crazy though, right? Alright, like hold on. Isn't this kinda crazy? Yeah, it is a little bit. Two, three, four, five. It forms like a little bit of a gateway. Sure. Except this cave goes pretty far in there. Maybe it becomes a column. Maybe we don't actually try to close all this off. I heard a zombie. Are they drowned in here? I thought drowned don't spawn outside of... like inside a cave. So 5 by 5, so this becomes a big column. Holding up the stairs, the ramp up above. But behind it, it's gonna be open inside the cave, right? Five by 5, so it's substantial. And the thing about taking inspiration from the Greeks, the further back you go in history, in architecture history, the more massive things are, because their engineering was not as advanced, right? And so they had to use more mass to make the building stand up. Like, more advanced materials are stronger, and therefore you can hold up more weight with less material, and therefore like the buildings become slimmer, and they look lighter, and often they are lighter. And also with better mathematics, you can figure out how much mass you need more accurately, and therefore save materials that way. Like, you know, like how thick does a column needs to be to hold up the roof? Well, I don't know. How thick does the column have to be? And so, like, if you know the weight of the roof, and you know the load-bearing capacity of the material, then you just like divide the weight by the area of the columns, and like you can, if you know the math, you can work it out. You can work out how thick the columns have to be to hold up the roof, right? But you need to understand the math, you need to understand material science. You have to have some understanding of, you know, how strong the stone is, or whatever it is, how strong the wood is. Like how much weight can the wood hold up before it breaks? So the better your math, and the better your science, and the better your, you know, material understanding, then you can optimize your building more. And so when you go back in history, the earlier you go, the more you see that they just didn't understand the math. Right? Their science and math was not advanced enough for them to really optimize their buildings. And so the like old architecture is really massive. They just compensated, right? Like you ask them, well, how many columns do you need to hold up this roof? And they're like, I don't know. And so just put in more columns just in case. Because if they don't put enough in, then it's gonna fall down, and they don't want that to happen. So they just put in more columns just in case, because they don't actually know how many they need. So, yeah. Generally, in general terms, the further you go back in history, the more massive the architecture. Or like, you know, the more... the size versus strength, or yes. How should I say it? For a building of a given size, the amount of structure they end up using to hold up that weight. Anyway, that explains this massive column. Like, the remarkable thing about Gothic architecture is that they're building out of small pieces of stone, but they managed to have like really thin thin columns and thin arches and flying buttresses holding up really tall structures. And so that's the remarkable thing about Gothic architecture is that they really pushed stone to the limit. Like how much weight and how much height you can get out of a piece of stone, or like small pieces of stone. They really pushed it to the limit. Sometimes they pushed it beyond the limit and things fell down. That happened to some Gothic cathedrals. They would collapse during construction, or they would collapse not long after construction, because they pushed it a little too far, right? But for the most part, the cathedrals stay standing up. And some of the most remarkable stone structures to ever exist. Not entirely safe though. Again, because they push the stone to the limit, they are kind of vulnerable to earthquakes and storms. Sometimes they fall down. Hopefully the ones that are still standing are no longer prone to falling down, because the ones that are prone to falling down, they probably fell down already. So the ones that still stand, they're probably okay. Probably. And then in more modern times, of course, steel. When steel first appeared as a construction material, the Eiffel Tower was a very early example. What's going on in there? Like, it allowed a big building to be held up by very little material, because of course steel, the strength to weight ratio is very good. Better than older materials. And so then you started getting steel skyscrapers, which again, compared to stone, is just a completely different level. You have tall skyscrapers with a, compared to earlier materials, a very, very thin structure holding up a very tall building. I mean, we see it every day now, so it's not that amazing when we look at it, because we're used to it. But imagine when skyscrapers were new, right? Like Paris? Paris is what, 6 stories? Historic Paris. And then you put the Eiffel Tower in, and it's this huge tower rising above the old Paris. Right. So at the time, it was the most amazing thing that people have ever seen before. Nobody have ever seen something like that before.